let's play some of this debate, and let's start with there were three different very solid punches landed on Joe Biden by Bill de Blasio, Tulsi Gabbard, and Cory Booker. Or excuse me, pardon me. Two solid punches on Joe Biden by Cory Booker and Bill de Blasio, and one very solid punch on Kamala Harris by Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, don't worry, Tulsi fans. We're going to play that too.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, like, how come you don't play Tulsi? Tulsi should sue you and not just Google. All right, this is... by the way, I have no problem with that lawsuit. Anything that pressures Google, I am totally down with. So total props on that. Google should be sued and sued often. This is Bill de Blasio. And I want to just say, I mean, not only is Bill de Blasio absolutely right about this, but this is important because, look, people, as I've always said, I think if you don't like Barack Obama on a personal level, I suspect you have racial issues. But as a politician, the man was president of the United States for 2 terms. And if you talk about Wall Street drones, if you talk about Wall Street, you talk about foreign policy, you talk about immigration, you talk about inequality, you talk about ecology. This is not a record. I'll be as diplomatic as possible. You don't want to replicate this record. And so Bill de Blasio is absolutely right to attack Joe Biden on deportations and be honest about what the Obama-Biden record on deportations was. This is the time to do it. It's Democratic primary.
Biden, I didn't hear your response when the issue came up of all those deportations. You were vice president of the United States. I didn't hear whether you tried to stop them or not using your power, your influence in the White House. Did you think it was a good idea, or do you think it was something that needed to be stopped?
Mr. The president came along, and he's the guy that came up with the idea, first time ever, of dealing with the Dreamers. He put that in the law. He talked about a comprehensive plan, which he laid before the Congress, saying that we should find a pathway to citizenship for people. He said we should up the number of people that we're able to bring into this country. Lastly, he also pointed out that we should go to the source of the problem and fix it where people were leaving in the first place. So he did. Compare him to Donald Trump, I think, is absolutely bizarre.
But I don't hear an answer from the vice president. Right. I'm confused. I asked the vice president point blank, did he use his power to stop those deportations? He went right around the question. Mr. Vice President, you want to be president of the United States. You need to be able to answer the tough questions. I guarantee you, if you're debating Donald Trump, he's not going to let you off the hook. So did you say those deportations were a good idea? Or did you go to the president and say, this is a mistake, we shouldn't do it? Which one?
I was vice president. I am not the president. I keep my recommendations to him in private. Unlike you, I expect you would go ahead and say whatever was said privately with him. That's not what I do. What I do say to you is he moved to fundamentally change the system. That's what he did. That's what he did. But much more has to be done. Much more has to be done.
I still don't hear an answer.
De Blasio is 100% right, and the deportations were absolutely wrong, inhumane, and this move that any criticism means you're equating or drawing equivalency between Obama and Trump is dishonest, juvenile, and offensive to the lives of those people. And also, I just want to say, I mean, that, pathetic weak tea to say, oh, I guess you would have said what was said in private. Later, Biden mentioned that he opposed the surge in Afghanistan, which, good for him. The surge in Afghanistan was absolutely wrong and a profoundly cynical decision.
Similar to the one where
it's very similar to
the deportations.
Precisely. Buy currency with a certain group of people for a broader aim. In this case, the military-industrial complex. In the immigration case, Republicans. But, both cynical, both wrong in both instances. But Biden, by saying he opposed the surge, is in some sense having a private conversation publicly. I just want to note that because it was so pathetic. And Cory Booker is going to hit him on this.
This is literally right after the previous.
This was very well done. You can't run a whole race that is predicated on don't ask me any tough questions. I was President Obama's vice president. And, you're identifying a troop surge in Afghanistan or record deportations? Well, I'm my own guy.
Mr. Vice President, you can't have it both ways. You invoke President Obama more than anybody in this campaign. You can't do it when it's convenient and then dodge it when it's not. And the second thing, and this really irks me because I heard the Vice President say that, if you got a PhD, you can come right into this country. Well, that's playing into what the Republicans want, to pit some immigrants against other immigrants.
That's right.
Some are.
That's probably enough.
Okay, well, that's excellent. Yeah. That was Cory Booker had a lot of really strong moments last night. I'm not sure how much it will move the dial, but he was definitely on the strong. That debate can do nothing but good for him, and I think that it was great to see Cory Booker of all people debunk a tired neoliberal immigration talking point that endless Democrats and Republicans have echoed, that if you're desirable, you can stay. If you're not, you can't. This is a great way of actually looking at three different positions on immigration. There is the overtly racist Trump Republican approach, which, why not people from Norway or not people from shithole countries, right? Now, it is absolutely not the same thing and a ridiculous false equivalency, right? And the person with a PhD could be from Ghana. The person with a PhD could be from Bangladesh, Nigeria, Norway, Jamaica, whatever, right? So that is what he's saying. But he is saying it's someone with a PhD. That's multicultural neoliberal capitalism, which is better than white supremacist capitalism. The real answer is don't pivot people who may be refugees or may be trying to reset a life in the United States. We have a decriminalized, humane process that respects rights for all, period. And of course, that doesn't mean open borders. The open borders rhetoric is really unhelpful right now because, one, it is used by the right basically to mean cheap labor to exploit. Yes?
Well, it also activates notions about migrants that have been really deeply propagandized into the American public. And so I think you need to take a more incremental approach to getting there.
It's just not happening tomorrow. I mean, nobody. And again, if you want to make it concrete, again, ideas like Daniel Bessner's advocacy, which I am totally on board with in a long term of some type of broader America's union that move towards open borders. That's actually how you do something like this. And I do support that as a long-term goal with raised standards, redistribution, and all of the other issues that you need to address. But in the short term, the answer is you decriminalize, you humanize and demilitarize the process. You observe what is already on the books in terms of refugee conventions and so on. You immediately make illegal the family separation policies. You, as I've already said, you demilitarize. And then, yes, you have a hemispheric approach so that you end U.S. foreign policy of pushing a drug war, supporting dictators. Honduras has a massive military base there. That is what's driving the desperate human need of people to get here, which nobody wants to be in a situation in. So, it's just very important to have this clear, humane, progressive position and not get tripped up in all of these various different types of open or not open borders rhetoric. It's very confusing and unhelpful. And you need to draw a clear third lane between the ethnic cleansing and racism of Trump and Republicans and this, well, by golly, if you're here to start a tech company, we'll take you. We need to take anybody that needs to be here. I want to play one other. Oh, this is Neera Tanden.
Yeah, Neera Tanden said, the GOP didn't attack Reagan. They built him up for decades. Dem candidates who attack Obama are wrong and terrible. Obama wasn't perfect, but come on, people. Next to Trump, he kind of is. This is my outrage of the day. And my outrage of the day is Neera Tanden calling someone else in politics terrible.
Well, it's also just so profoundly unstrategic
and ridiculous, right?
Ridiculous.
We can't inflate Obama's legacy like Reagan's was. One, like the parties are different; it's different mindsets, but it's also a completely different media environment. Like,
right?
I mean, it's Harry Potter.
It's pure Harry Potter, and also, by the way, I mean, Ronald Reagan partially became who he was because he and his political movement vigorously attacked the relative domestic moderation of Ford and Nixon. So it's absurd. I mean, if you're doing political analogies, President Obama was a moderate. So he's more analogous, not in terms of historical importance or charisma or anything like that, but he's more analogous to, a moderate Republican, right? He's more like George H.W. Bush than Ronald Reagan. He's more like Gerald Ford or Richard Nixon in terms of his relative position to the other parties. So the idea that you can just sort of pretend through wish fulfillment that somebody served a equivalent ideological anchor is just a fantasy. And in addition to the fact, as Matt points out, in today's media environment, Ronald Reagan, who of course was a massive racist and arch far-right leader, but at the same time, he gave amnesty to immigrants, as he should have done. Great move. Should be done today. Do you think that would have lasted for a second in a Fox News, Alex Jones media environment? They would have turned on Ronald Reagan in a second. And in fact, by the way, they did turn on Ronald Reagan when he did the best things that he did in his presidency, which is pursue disarmament agreements with the Soviet Union. There was a massive Republican freak out about that.
Yeah.
So this is just fantasy world to try to suffocate a necessary debate today.
I agree that it's going to be hairy when Obama's legacy intersects with actual real ongoing problems. But the thing, the trade-off he made with the deportations, trying to build up goodwill with fascists, is like, this is a bit of a ridiculous metaphor, but I think it might underscore how ridiculous that calculus was. When I was like a fourth grade or something like that, one of my best friends got a Shiba Inu puppy. I don't know if you've seen those. They're really cute.
They're very cute.
And I really wanted one. And I asked my parents for one, but they weren't really super hot on the idea. So what I did is I cleaned my room as clean as it ever was in my entire life. And I'm not a terribly, cleanly person.
True.
When it comes to my immediate environment. But I cleaned it.
I like how Brendan is such a at least you're acknowledging it.
The entire, I focus on more important things. But I cleaned it, everything off the floor, just because I also noticed my friend did that when they got the dog. So I'm like, these two things correlate.
Right.
And guess what? I didn't get the dog. So.
Right, exactly. Oh, that's good. You're calling.